everybody, this is Sarah Lewis, Program Manager out of the Lexington office. I'm going to wait a few minutes until we have some other people on here, and then I'm going to get started with some cooking. Doesn't look like anybody is on just yet, but and set up, and we're going to get started. And if we have any staff members on, if you could manage our comments for us, because I am on my phone today, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to see everybody's comments, so I'll try to keep checking back in. Okay, we are going to wait another minute or two. Hello, if you're just arriving, please tell us where you're from, what your troop number is, if you love to cook, what you're excited about learning. Welcome. Hi Laura. I loved your Play-Doh video this morning. That was really fun. All of our people are gonna get 2 cooking videos today. Okay, it looks like we only have a few people on, so I'm gonna wait another minute. While we're waiting, just wanted to show you guys I have everything ready to go. Our kitchen doesn't always look like this when I cook. Usually I try to keep it a little bit more on one little area of the counter, but I wanted to be sure to touch on everything today. Hi, Junior Troop 2594 in Richmond. Glad you guys are signed on today. Okay. Well, we have a few people on. I'm going to go ahead and get started, and hopefully we'll have more people trickle in. I'm going to have a camera friend today. Thank you, Laura. Hi, Haley. Okay, all right. I'm going to pass this off. Here we go. So today I wanted to make sure that I make something that I think any junior girl and up could make. Honestly, some of our brownies could make it, and I think with an adult's help, a Daisy could probably make it too. So I am going to try to make an omelet. Just as a disclaimer, one of the steps for this badge is to learn from a professional. I am not a professional. I just really like to cook. I love food, so I wanted to make sure to mention that. I know we're all kind of stuck inside right now, but maybe when you get to go out again, you can talk to an actual chef. That'd be really cool. So I wanted to say that. I also wanted to say that, and I'll mention these again at the end, we have some hashtags we would love to have you guys use to share things out. It's going to be hashtag KY Girl Scouts, which is here, hashtag KY Girl Scouts at home, and then we have our Kentucky hashtags that we would love for you to use too, which is hashtag Team Kentucky, and hashtag healthy at home. So again, I'm going to attempt an omelet today. It might mess up and we might turn it into an egg scramble, and that's okay too. That's part of cooking, is knowing that you might mess some stuff up, but there's always a way to doctor it up again. So what I have here, I'm going to try to obviously use some eggs. I have some spinach, some green pepper, part of a tomato, some onion, some little mushrooms, and then some green onion that I'm going to stick on top. I also wanted to talk to you guys today about some flavoring and some seasonings, and then I'm going to talk to you about tools as well. So, to get started, I wanted to note also that this is obviously not a vegan or a vegetarian meal. I'm sorry, I'm using what I have in my own kitchen. Hopefully, if you do eat vegan or vegetarian or whatever your diet may be, you can find some easy recipes online to do as well. So, these are just my opinions on these ingredients. Obviously, again, I'm not a professional chef, but I love trying to include veggies into whatever I can, for the fresh aspect of it. So, we have some eggs. The first thing I want to talk to you guys about is making sure you have your ingredients. That's the first step in cooking, is making sure that if you have a recipe you want to follow, or you just know that you really like a certain food, make sure you go to the store and grab some of it. Obviously you can see I have already used some of this week. I don't want to be wasteful, so I just wanted to use what I had. So the first thing I wanted to show you guys is chopping ingredients, and that's kind of a scary skill to learn when you haven't chopped things before. If you are a 5th grade junior, maybe this isn't the first time that you have chopped something in the kitchen, but I wanted to mention safety first. Practice makes perfect with this, and it's okay if it doesn't look super uniform. So I'm going to start out, I think, probably with my mushrooms. So we have these little baby Bella mushrooms, and I have written out the recipe for this, so at the end I'll show that to you guys. So when you think about cutting something, you can do it a lot of different ways. So since I have 3, I'll show you a few different ways. So you could just chop it in half, and you can see I'm holding my knife pretty firmly in my hand, my dominant hand, so if that's your left hand, right hand, whatever works for you. You could leave it like this. You have officially chopped a mushroom. Or maybe you want to chop it in half again. Sorry, we have cats in the kitchen. So you could chop it in half again, and now you have a quartered mushroom. Those are kind of big chunks to me. So what I'm going to do is actually try to get them in a little mass here. And I'm just going to try to chop all around on my mushrooms. And again, it's okay that these are not super uniform. If you want to work in a professional kitchen, obviously you're going to want your cuts to actually look nice. Mine are all different sizes, and that's okay. So what I'm being really careful of, you might have seen me holding the knife like this. What you don't want to do ever is make sure you don't get your hand anywhere underneath the blade, because we don't want to chop any fingers. And so you can see all different sizes, and that's okay. It's still going to taste good. So hopefully you can see everything okay. I've got my nice bright green cutting board and my bright green knife. That is not necessarily Girl Scout green, but we like it. So that was a really rough cut. You can tell that there's a big difference between the size of those pieces, and that's okay. You could also do, I'm going to try to show it to you. You could do nice, thin slices. And those are going to be a little bit more uniform. They're going to look a little bit nicer. So now we have these little slices of mushroom, and that's going to be, you know, that could be really good on like a pizza, anything that you really want to put mushroom on. And again, if I pile it up and just kind of rub, that's sort of the style that I like to use. Now I'm going a little bit fast, but again, practice makes perfect, so just make sure. I'm also using kind of a big knife, and our knife is really sharp, but there's something really nice about having a good sharp knife that can cut through your veggies really easy. So I know I had 3 mushrooms over here, but I think I'm actually going to leave it at 2, so later when I show you guys my recipe card, take note that I only used 2 of my mushrooms. And the next thing I want to show you is my pepper. So again, our pepper is actually kind of challenging to get to this point. What I did, you can tell that it's sort of a half of a pepper. I lopped off the top of it, and then I took out the bit that has all the seeds, and then chopped it in half. The easiest way that I have found to chop these is to get it into quarters, and then I like to just try to do the strips. So how I did the mushroom the second time, this is similar. Okay. I actually think I'm going to just use that quarter of a pepper too, so maybe I'll just post the recipe in the event page instead of showing you what I wrote down. So notice how these are all fairly similar in size, these strips. So I cut them all long ways, and now I'm just going to go ahead and cut them horizontally too, so that I then get nice sort of rectangular pieces. And if there's any big pieces that sneak in, just give those. So I might have too many ingredients for this omelet. I'm thinking it's probably going to be a scramble. Next is going to be my onion. There are a lot of different ways to chop an onion, that is for sure. There are definitely some life hacks you'll be able to find on Facebook or anywhere else. I'm just going to chop off this little bit at the top. Whoop. See, gotta be careful. This is not the most efficient way to get this out, but what I want, I think, are some little square pieces. So I'm going to do something similar to what I did with the pepper, where I try to do some nice, thin, longer pieces that I can then turn and chop the other way. Okay, so we have a little bit of onion here. I'm just gonna turn them sideways. Okay, so we've got this nice line of ingredients going. So I have this big bowl of spinach here, and you might be thinking, okay, she looks like she's having a salad. I'm actually not gonna bother chopping this because it's gonna cook down, and you'll see what that looks like in a minute. But I'm gonna give myself a couple of tomato slices, and something interesting with these tomatoes is that it has this kind of stretchy skin on it, which makes it kind of challenging to cut through. So I usually try to get the tip of my knife in there, make a little slit, and then I will use that cut to make a nice slice. And again, we have a really nice sharp knife. It might be tough if you don't have a really good sharp knife, but that's part of the ingredients. When you're thinking of what ingredients you're gonna need, think about what tools you're gonna need too. So I needed my cutting board, my knife. I'm gonna need a pan and a spatula soon. So I wanted to make sure I had all of that ready for today's video so that I had it all ready here. So I have two slices. Since these are pretty much the same size, I'm actually gonna go ahead and just stack one on top of the other. I'm kind of saving myself some work. So I'm making those long cuts. Now I'm going to try to turn my pile, my squishy tomatoes, sideways. So here's my original cuts, and I'm going to go back the other way. Okay, so we have prepped our filling, and I forgot to get my cheese out. We're going to have some mozzarella too today. We have our tomato, our onion, our green pepper, our mushroom. I didn't quite use all of my ingredients, and we got some spinach here too. I'm trying to make sure I don't skip over anything. So we have talked about chopping. Again, have a good knife. Lots of different shapes and sizes is okay. And next up, I wanted to talk about temperature and cooking and making sure that we're staying safe with that. So I have my pan and my spatula and some butter that we're definitely going to use here shortly too. And I wanted to talk about cooking with different temperatures because it's really easy to let something burn if we don't pay attention to it. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to go ahead and put my pan on the stove. And Laura mentioned this in her Play-Doh video earlier. It can be really helpful to go ahead and heat up your pan so that when you stick ingredients in there, they go ahead and start sizzling. So I'm going to go ahead. I think our stove can get hot really easy. I'm going to put mine on like medium-high, closer to medium. And then I'm going to toss my ingredients in just a second. So I wanted to talk a little bit about measuring things. So I have over here some examples. We have a tablespoon, a quarter cup. A quarter cup is what I was going for my ingredients over here on the cutting board. I have a feeling, yeah, I'm a little bit over a quarter of a cup on these ingredients, and that's okay. But when it comes to measuring ingredients, with cooking, I think it's a little bit looser. So maybe if you are baking something, you might want to measure every single ingredient to a T. I like to stay kind of fast and loose when I'm cooking. I just kind of chop and go and decide with my eyes, like, that seems like enough. But if you're a beginner cooker, you might want to try measuring things. following a recipe. There are tons of recipes out there. So measure your ingredients if you really, really want to. I just kind of eyeball it, at least for simple recipes. So I actually wanted to cook some sausage today too, which I forgot about until just now. So I think I'm going to cook my sausage first, and I wanted to come back around to both safety and being sanitary in the kitchen when you're dealing with heat. So I just put my pan on the stove and turned it on. That's very normal for me. If you know you're going to be using a stove, make sure that you tell your parents you're going to be cooking, or your guardian, whoever you live with. Tell them, hey, I'm going to be in the kitchen and I'm going to be using heat. And that goes for the oven as well. Or even if you're cooking out on a campfire, say, hey, I'm going to be around something really hot, just so you know, just to stay safe. So I can feel that my pan is getting really hot. Notice that I am just hovering over it. I'm not putting my hand directly on the pan. So just make sure that you, and it might sound like common sense, but make sure you're not touching anything that is on the stove. Just don't do it. Hopefully you've already learned that, but it can be really painful if you get a burn, and if you're going to use the oven, make sure you have pot holders on too. So, something else I wanted to talk about was cleaning up as we go. So I have some dirty dishes here already, and some little fragments of food. So I'm going to go ahead, and it is just a really good practice to go ahead and clean up as you go. Toss whatever needs to be tossed. We had a piece of pepper that fell on the floor. And then make sure you wash your hands after you touch something that you shouldn't. So I know I picked up a pepper that fell on the floor. I'm going to have to wash my hands again in a minute because I'm about to touch this raw sausage. So I wanted to make sure that was really clear too. If you guys are dealing with raw egg, if you're dealing with bacon or sausage or hamburger, make sure that if you do pick it up, that you then sanitize your hands again. And the reason is pretty simple. It is just because there's lots of germs. And I actually washed all of my produce before I cut it all up anyway. And when I washed off my baby Bella mushrooms, the water that came off of them was super brown. So it probably wouldn't have hurt me, but most vegetables come straight from the earth. So it's good to wash them, and then there's also stuff like pesticides that you might not want on there. So just make sure that if you make a bigger mess than this, especially, that you are cleaning things up as you go, sticking dishes in the dishwasher, putting things in the sink and cleaning them. That way, as you are cooking, you have more surface to work with. So our sausage is going to cook here on medium for a little bit. You might be able to hear it sizzling already. I think I'm going to throw a little bit of butter in the pan, just so that it... I lost my butter. Aha, thank you. So this is really nice. If you don't feel super comfortable eyeballing it, you can use the little lines on the butter. That's a nice little cheat. So I will probably end up just taking a tablespoon to toss in there because my sausage has some fat in it already, and that's what butter is. It's a nice fat to add to things. I think I'm going to turn my heat up too. So while we are letting our sausage cook, I want to talk to you guys about monitoring your food. So I have put something on the stove. There's heat. There's food cooking over that heat. What I don't want to do is leave the house or decide to take a shower or whatever. I don't want to leave my food unattended when there's heat involved. So if you're baking cookies in the oven, 25 minutes, and you think, that's enough time for me to go on the block, I'll just leave them in the oven. Not a great idea, because something could happen and it could start a fire, and that could be really dangerous. So I'm going to add some butter to my pan. Going to make sure to keep an eye on my food. this is just the way that I like to do it, using that little measurement. And then I'm gonna toss it right in. Okay, so we're gonna stir this around a little bit. And you can see parts of the sausage are still really, really pink, and some parts are getting brown. So it's always important, again, when you're monitoring your food, making sure you're not leaving it unattended, that you kind of give it a good stir every now and then to make sure that it cooks evenly. Because even though it's all in one big pan, it doesn't just necessarily cook all the same way. So try out different things on your stove with your tools. See what works. Maybe part of your burner is a little bit hotter than the rest of it. Maybe your food is cylindrical and likes to roll around. I will tell you, it smells pretty good because of that butter that's in there. When in doubt, add more butter. Or maybe some salt. So, we have our sausage cooking. And if you think that you can't remember to pay attention to your food when you're cooking it, if it's got a really long cook time, you know, sometimes we have big chunks of meat or like pastas that we're baking in the oven that might take a long time. If you think you're going to forget, set a timer. So if you have a smartphone, even if you just have an alarm clock, if that's all you have in your house to keep track of the time, maybe have somebody help you if you think you're going to forget. But pay attention to it because if you let it go too long, it might burn. So while our sausage is cooking, I want to talk about seasonings and flavors. So you'll see that we have like a bunch of different seasonings out here, and I wanted to show you guys some of my favorites. Onion and garlic powder, I promise, are just pretty good in just about anything you could cook. I also really love using parsley and things, and then if I want to go for kind of an Italian flavor, I really love using oregano, sage, and for pastas. I use it on cauliflower sometimes. And then this one right here, this is my absolute favorite seasoning, and this is smoked paprika. And this is something that I hadn't had until I was probably in my 20s, and it is like my absolute favorite flavoring. So you can use lots of different spices when you are cooking, but you could also use things like sour cream or hot sauce, mayo, condiments. There are lots of different ways to make sure that you flavor your food. So if you are in the comments right now, tell me what your favorite flavor is. Is it spicy? Is it sweet? Tangy? We would love to hear from you guys while we're doing this today. Because flavor and seasoning is going to be a big deal when you're cooking food. Otherwise it could be really bland. Salt is a really easy one. Today I think I'm probably just going to use salt and pepper. This sausage is definitely getting brown now. So I think what I'm going to do, you can see there's still a good amount of butter and fat in my pan. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and you guys can watch while it sort of just shrinks down. Whoop. Don't do what I just did. I got too close to the pan. And I don't know if you all noticed earlier, but I did have my sausage links over on this side of the counter because that is important too, to keep your any raw meat away from your vegetables. And that's honestly a good practice even when you're at the grocery store. If you have one of those carts that has an upper part and a lower part, it might be a good idea to keep the meat in one section of the and your veggies in a different part, and that again just goes that's because of germs. So my spinach is already shrinking down. Now I'm just going to go ahead and try to gently stir all of my other filling ingredients into my pan. So I'm going to go ahead and stick that in the sink. If I have a free minute, I will go on and clean my cutting board while this stuff is sizzling. It definitely is going to have to be an egg scramble today. I think I have it here for an omelet. So I'm going to keep an eye on this and keep stirring it until it looks like everything is kind of nice and brown. My sausage might need to come out here in a second, but what I'm going to do next, I'm going to let this stuff sit in here and simmer. I'm going to put it on in between low and medium. And next up, I think, is my eggs. So, I have my bowl that my spinach is in. I'm going to try this, and I'm going to use that to crack my eggs. Now, I'm not super hungry, but I think this will look best if I use 3 eggs instead of the regular 2 that I might use. So, it can be really frustrating, especially when you first start trying to do this. You have to find the right balance of cracking your egg on the bowl. You don't want to smash it, but you don't want to tap it too late because then you might not actually crack the egg. One of my friends works with chickens a lot, and she actually told me that the softness of the shell, or how easily it cracks, has to do with how recently the egg was cracked. So that's a fun fact. I'm going to make sure this isn't burning over here, continuing to monitor it. Also, you want to keep in mind, if you do have multiple ingredients in a pan like this, they might cook at a different rate, just depending on the structure of the food. So my spinach is pretty cooked down. My tomato is going to kind of melt right up. The peppers, however, might take a little bit longer. So I think I'm going to keep an eye on the peppers, since they're what needs to cook the longest, and that's going to be how I judge when everything is done. So back to our eggs. The way that I like to hold it is sort of like this. Pointer finger towards the top, and it's resting gently in my hand. And what I'm going to try to do is hit towards the middle here. So when I crack it on the edge, hopefully it doesn't mess up too bad. I'm going to get a nice little crack there, and then I'm going to pinch it open, and we're going to have a nice egg there. And it's going to make a little bit of a mess. So we got some goop on the counter, so we need to remember to wipe that up so that we're sanitary, because what we don't want is for, a cat on the counter and lick that up, or for us to put other food there later and have it contaminate. So I'm going to wipe that up with an actual sanitary wipe later, but for now, we have our egg in our bowl. I'm going to check on the sausages. No, I don't want that there, do I? It looks like our ingredients are cooking up pretty well. Sausage seems okay still. So you're going to have to learn with your stove and your oven. So since I'm going to do a scramble, I went ahead and broke the egg yolks. You might have heard of eggs being cooked over easy or over medium or over hard before. Those all involve not poking at the yolks and letting them be full. Since I'm going to be scrambling my eggs, I'm going to go ahead and just sort of whisk them together here with my fork. I'm not super particular about making sure it's whisked to a certain point. Some people add milk to theirs or heavy cream. I'm pretty good with just a little bit of froth up there on the top. Make sure you don't eat any of the egg when it is in this state. Raw egg can be not good, so I'm going to dump that on in there. Now, if I were going to make an omelet, this is not how I would do it. I went ahead and just tossed it all in one pan because I knew I was going to be scrambling all together. But if you did want to do an omelet, you would do the eggs the same way. You would just do that part first. Go ahead and dump it the same way, but let it create a nice circle in the bottom of your pan. And as that's cooking, you can make sure to have your ingredients ready that you put in, and then fold it over on top. That way the backside of it is already cooked. I'm just going to go wild and stir it all together. Now, going back to our seasonings, this is generally when I would add my salt and pepper because everything needs to cook for a second, and I have all my ingredients in the pan that are all really hot, ready for some seasoning. My little sausages are over here just staying warm. So another thing, making sure you have the appropriate size tool. So this is a lot of food, and we have a really small pan actually that just would not have fit everything. So this is great if I wanted to cook a single egg, wouldn't have been everything in there. So make sure you have the right tools. Of the egg that are already cooked, when you stir it around, you'll see that it starts to look different. I'm gonna want all of that gone away before I can eat any of this. Again, that's partially because I don't want to eat raw egg because of the germs. The other part is just because of flavor and the way that it tastes and texture. I want it to be better when you are looking at cooking something. You can think about, okay, what do I like? Do I like things that are salty or sweet? Do I want something crunchy? There's a difference between the texture of tortilla chips and are just a lot of things to consider when you're cooking. We have really fancy salt and pepper shakers, so yours might not look like this. I'm gonna add an actual pinch of salt just to my egg. I have a little bit of salt in it already and a little bit of pepper also just to the egg. The time that it took me to grab my spices, I have a feeling that the bottom of this mixture is, yeah, getting cooked pretty good. So you can see it's actually becoming like big chunks, and that's okay. I think this is about the level. So I have my plate here. I'm gonna have some berries with me, and my sausage, sauce that I could make to go on top of my scramble. I think I'm gonna skip it today just because I've got so many ingredients in here already. So that's good to think about too, is okay, do I really need this ingredient in here? You saw me not use all of my mushrooms. And there we go. So this is enough food probably for 2 people. And I love all of the different colors. I'm making sure to turn off my stove, but you have veggies, you have eggs for protein, sausage for protein, fruit, so you're getting a lot of vitamins. That's why I really like this meal in general, and you really don't have to eat it just for breakfast. I'm obviously going to be eating it for a really early dinner, but in general, a really great, easy meal, and it took us about half an hour to do this. Usually I think this would take me about 10 minutes to make. I'm going to make sure I haven't forgotten to tell you guys anything really quick. So we talked about chopping, we talked about temperature, we talked about monitoring your food, safety, seasonings and flavors are. Tell me your favorite textures of food too. Do you like really hate? Yeah, so there's a lot of science behind cooking. Again, it's really different from baking. So maybe we can do a baking video sometime soon. Because with this, you saw I just kind of threw a bunch of ingredients together, tossed some seasoning on, added it to heat, and now it's a meal. Whereas with baking, you really should probably measure stuff so that it really combines in the way it should and turns into something great. So I'm gonna do some dishes now and wipe off our counter, but now I have made a meal and I know that you guys can do it too. So if you make this or if you make anything else, I'm gonna remind you now of those hashtags. If we have any staff watching, please comment those as well. So those are gonna be hashtag KY Girl Scouts, hashtag KY Girl Scouts at home, hashtag Team Kentucky, and hashtag Healthy at Home. So please share out what you do, keep cooking, and hopefully we'll have some more cooking videos for you guys in the future. That's all I have for you today. Thanks everybody.